This is the Reviewing Network Live, a weekly stream of consciousness recording session where I sit back with you folks out there, talk about some of the big news stories from the past week, and some other things I found that might be of amusement to you out there. I think you might get a kick out of it. Now, these are more like audio podcasts and are much longer than my usual videos and are also, for the most part, unedited and will contain some foul language. So, if you're easily offended by that, I advise you to maybe step back a bit, maybe go somewhere else. But hey, if you're up to the challenge, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks. And for the 121st time ever, we are live. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Reviewing Network Live, coming to you from the Reviewing Network Studios on this 12/21/2025. I literally just noticed that the episode count that we're on and the date are nearly the same. If you take the two out, it's basically 121. But actually, no, mind. I got confused there for a second. But Merry Sunday before Christmas, everybody, and yeah, it's that time of the year again. We're getting close to the end of the year. We're about 1 week away from 2026 coming into play. And once again, it's been a very eventful week, and more than likely it's going to be an eventful week this week, because next week and the week after that will probably be dead silent until we get past New Year's. I mean, that's usually what happens around here, but we've got some stories to talk about here. Some interesting updates to some stories we've been covering. We have the latest update on Paramount's attempts to buy Warner Brothers and what Warner Brothers responded to saying. Last week we touched on the Oscars potentially moving to NBC. Well, the Oscars are going to move, but not to where you think they are. There was another big purchase made by a company. What did they buy? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about a couple of Disney live-action projects, Paul King's latest movie. We'll also talk about how to fix the college football playoff, because after a promising start on Friday, yesterday pretty much showed that, yeah, this thing still needs to change badly. And I saw something yesterday, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about this, because I hear something, and it sounds like something. It's not supposed to sound like what it's supposed to sound like. Let's just put it that way. But we'll get to all those in just a moment. But before we do any of that, we have to start off, of course, with the weekend box office. And not surprisingly, the week before Christmas, and with 5 big new releases out there, it was going to be pretty stacked all across the board for big new releases. It was just a matter of how much were they going to do, where was everything going to place, and judging by the estimates, everything kind of fell into pretty much where you expected it to fall into. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the top 5, and we'll start off with the number 1 film from last week, which was the only returning film from this week's top 5, Zootopia 2, which dropped to 5th, $14.5 million, dropping to 44%. Its 4-week total now is up to $282.8 million, and if you take the numbers from the worldwide numbers, it's at it's nearing $1.3 billion, $1.272 billion, and if you want a little bit of a comparison to the first Zootopia movie, 4 weeks in. Hold on one second. It's actually about 41 million more than where Zootopia was when it opened up in March of 2016. So it is well ahead of Zootopia right now, and it's looking like it's going to do some good business, especially with the holiday season coming up, even though it's got stiff competition ahead of it. Case in point with the number 4 movie this week, the SpongeBob movie, Search for SquarePants, one of the big new releases this week, which brought in $16 million. Now, that does not sound like a whole lot of money, but the budget on this is $64 million. Yes, that's a little bit low for this film, but nevertheless, it's the holiday season. And the next 2 weeks are going to be extremely critical for all the family movies out there, how they're going to do in general. And this should do well enough to make that money back and then some here. The SpongeBob movies don't usually make a ton of money overall. Even the Sponge Out of Water movie came out at a time when you didn't have a big family film out there. They put it in the same weekend as the Lego movie, and it brought in over $160 million. That movie did. So this one, I would not be surprised at all if it makes a ton of money at the box office over the holiday weekend. It was a good movie, too. It was a really damn good film. It was well received by critics overall. Just a terrific, terrific film overall. It was a really good weekend for the movies, except for, surprisingly, the number 1 movie this week, which we'll touch on in a little bit. So something I didn't mention in my review yesterday was apparently this was originally supposed to be a movie centering around Mr. Krabs. Like, you know how they were doing all the SpongeBob spin-off movies? We had the Sandy Cheeks one last year, and then this year we had the Plankton movie, where supposedly this began as a Mr. Krabs movie, but then all of a sudden it derailed into something else entirely. It became its own new thing. And that makes a lot of sense when you see how Mr. Krabs has such a big impact in this movie, and actually does lead to some of the more heartfelt moments of the film in general. But more importantly, the same team that made the Smurfs made this movie. So you could clearly tell that Smurfs did not fail because of these writers. It failed because the studio interfered, and it clearly showed, and that's why that movie's ended up as one of the worst of the year, and this one's going to probably end up on the best of the year list. Or at least in the honorable mentions, in my opinion. But with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to number three movie this week, and that is The Housemaid, which is, of course, the latest film from Paul Feig, starring Sydney Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried. Sydney Sweeney, of course, a couple years ago had a big Christmas hit with Anyone But You, which was not a good movie in my personal opinion, but this one was really good. This is a movie that is so proud of its sleazy love of 90s thrillers like this, like The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Indecent Proposal, Fatal Attraction, those type of movies. That's definitely in this movie, and it plays it out so gloriously well. Only cost $35 million to make, brought in essentially $19 million if you count. There is no worldwide numbers, so I can't say if you count worldwide numbers because there are no worldwide numbers, but still did very well this weekend overall. It's gonna this is another one that's probably gonna make its money back over time, and yeah, definitely another one of those movies that is one of my favorites of the year. Really, it's a movie that really did come out of nowhere. I won't say that really come out of nowhere, but that's more of the number two movie that we're gonna get to here. But it's a great film. I really enjoyed the hell out of it. So now let's get to number two, because this is the movie that really came out of nowhere. I mean, this one. Angel Studios somehow, someway, creeping its way back up to the top of the box office without anybody noticing. Sound of Freedom a couple years ago. We had The King of Kings earlier this year. And now another animated feature from this company, and that is David. This is, of course, the story of the book of David from the Book of Samuel in the Old Testament, and it's a story about a young Israelite shepherd, poet, and warrior who is predestined to become the new king of Israel and embarks on a journey from beyond the shadow of an evil Philistine giant to prove to his people that true power lies not in the kingship but in faith and freedom. So David and Goliath. It's a David and Goliath story with a budget of $60.9 million. But the good news is this has already brought in $22 million this weekend, and should do very well over the course of the holiday season in general, like the last movie these guys did, The King of Kings. But this movie in particular, what do I really have to say about it? Because I haven't seen it, but I'll say this though: this is made by the same company that's distributing that god awful Animal Farm movie that is directed by Andy Serkis and features a cast that includes Seth Rogen and Glenn Close among it. If you know what I'm talking about, it's gonna be, if it's not in the worst movies of 2026 next year, then 2026 is gonna be a really god-awful year of movies. That's for damn sure. But let's go ahead and move on to the number one movie of the week. You Fucking People, man. And look, I knew this was gonna be a big hit, but I'm not even going to say it's a big hit overall, because, yeah, it still has a long way to go before it makes even a threat of its money back here. This thing cost $400+ million to make. So, yeah, this is going to be really, really hard for this movie to come back and make from it. Avatar Fire and Ash, which brought in $88 million, which is right in the middle of the Avatar movies in general. The last one, I think, brought in around... I think the last one did the most out of these movies. I think it made about $134 million. I'm looking at the numbers right here for The Way of Water. But then in 2009, that one brought in, I think, $77 million, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, $77 million. But that one had the benefit of long legs at the box office. Avatar: The Way of Water didn't really have that same kind of power overall, but it still did very well. I really doubt that this one is going to do that, because the word of mouth on this one here... The reviews for it were mostly mixed in general. The cinema score is an A, but, you know, brought in its budget of $400 million. If you include the worldwide numbers, it's up to $345 million. So, I think you have to, if you're going to have a successful movie, you have to double the amount of money you've made at the box office. And, you know, we had Mission Impossible, the The Final Reckoning earlier in the year, which was like a $300 million movie. That didn't even make that much back in general overall. And this one in particular, I don't think it really is going to do as much business as I think the studio is expecting it to do, honestly. I mean, it'll still make money overall, especially with a lack of competition coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'm trying to actually see what's the next movie on this list here that could possibly move into the number one spot here, because it doesn't look like there's going to be a whole lot in general here. You might get a sleeper hit in Primate, which comes out on January 9th, which now we know that that's going to be one of the only new releases out that weekend, because the Megan spinoff Soulmate has now been sold off to from Universal to somebody else, or they're selling it off to somebody else. I don't know exactly who they're selling it off to, but let's see what else is here. Maybe 28 years later, The Bone Temple on January 16th might be another option here. But other than that, though, this thing has got a clean path until, at the very least, I think February, where... Let me see what's coming out in February here. Anything of noteworthiness? Nothing really, honestly. The only thing that I could see that potentially could knock it out is on Valentine's weekend, when you've got Goat, the new Sony Pictures animated film, and Wuthering Heights with Margot Robbie. I was going to say her first big movie since Barbie, but that's incorrect, because we had a big, beautiful journey early in the year, which didn't do well. So I don't know. This is going to be a very interesting situation for Avatar this time around. I'm really curious to see how long this thing is going to have legs at the box office here. I mean, it's got the chance to do well over the course of the next couple of weeks, but I'm not expecting it to do gangbuster business like the other two movies did. At least that's my thinking behind it. But we did have one other big new release this weekend worth talking about, and that is Marty Supreme, which opens wide this weekend. But it only opened in limited release in 6 theaters this weekend and did very, very well. $875,000 in 6 theaters. That's an average of $145,000 per screen. And that is really those are really impressive numbers overall. That's actually the highest ever for A24 and the best average of the year, and the best overall for a limited release since La La Land back in 2016. The reviews for it have looked pretty good, and if you've been watching NFL football all this weekend, you have definitely seen previews for this on TV, and I mean, it could be good, but I'm looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, this reminds me way too much of a much better movie, Uncut Gems with Adam Sandler, which was a big critical success, big box office success, and yet the Academy said, no, we're not going to nominate this because we can't give Adam Sandler any Oscar buzz for this because we want him to make stupid comedies for the rest of his life. I mean, that's pretty much what happened with that film, because Uncut Gems definitely deserved to be nominated for some Oscars that year. But but I don't know. I've heard a lot of good stuff about it from the reviews. Could be good, so I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out. Anyway, yeah, that is the weekend box office. So let's go ahead and dig into some of the last big news stories of the year, and we're starting off with a doozy of a story from the latest updates in the Warner Brothers battle for Netflix with Paramount. So yeah, remember when Paramount literally decided to pull a hostile takeover bid of Warner Brothers, saying that they're going to give Warner Brothers over $100 billion with $30 a share. Well, Warner Brothers looked at that, and they basically told Paramount to go fuck themselves. I mean, not literally, but the big story this week in that is that Warner Brothers Discovery has rejected the Paramount takeover bid, calling it inferior to Netflix's deal and alleging that the Ellisons aren't providing the full backstop for financing. Now, this comes from Variety, and the story goes, Warner Brothers Discovery's board has formally said no thanks to the $108 billion takeover bid from David Ellison's Paramount Skydance and unanimously reiterated its support for the Netflix deal. Following WBD's announcement, Paramount affirmed that it will continue to make its case directly to shareholders for the latest $30 per share hostile offer, indicating for now that it won't go any higher. Warner Brothers Discovery says it remains committed to its mega deal with Netflix, under which the streamer would buy the Warner Brothers Studios, HBO, and HBO Max for $27.75 a share. This would take place after WBD's planned Q3 2026 spinoff of Discovery Global, largely comprising the company's TV networks. Warner Brothers Discovery said Wednesday its board has unanimously determined that the tender offer launched by Paramount Skydance on December 8th is not in the best interest of WBD and its shareholders, and does not meet the criteria of a superior proposal under the terms of WBD's merger agreement with Netflix announced on December 5th, 2025. The Warner Brothers Discovery Board recommended that WBD shareholders reject Paramount Skydance's offer. The terms of the Netflix merger are superior. The Paramount Skydance offer provides inadequate values and imposes numerous significant risks and costs on Warner Bros. Discovery. Warner Bros. Discovery board said in a letter to shareholders. The company also documented the sequence of interactions with Paramount in a scheduled 14D9 filing Wednesday with the SEC. According to the WBD board's letter, Paramount has consistently misled Warner Bros. Shareholders that its proposed transaction has a full backstop from the Ellison family. It does not and never has. Per the Warner Bros. Discovery Board, the most recent Paramount Skydance proposal includes a $40.65 billion equity commitment for which there is no Ellison family commitment of any kind. Instead, they propose that you rely on an unknown and opaque revocable trust from the certainty of this crucial deal funding. WBD is here referring to the revocable trust held by Larry Ellison, the tech mogul and ultra wealthy father of David. The WBD board letter continues, despite having been told repeatedly by WBD how important a full and unconditional financing commitment from the Ellison family was, and despite their own ample resources as well as multiple assurances by Paramount Skydance during our strategic review process that was such a commitment was forthcoming, the Ellison family has chosen not to backstop the Paramount Skydance offer. Warner Brothers said a revocable trust is no replacement for a secured commitment by a controlling stockholder because the assets and liabilities of the trust are not publicly disclosed and are subject to change. Furthermore, according to the WBD's letter, Paramount's acquisition offer can be terminated or amended by Paramount Skydance at any time prior to its completion, and is therefore not the same thing as a binding merger agreement. The Paramount Skydance offer is illusory, ILLUSORY, the letter says. Additionally, the Warner Bros. Discovery Board commented on Paramount's exception that it can achieve $9 million in cost synergy, $3 billion from the Paramount Skydance merger, and $6 billion via a merger with Warner Bros. Discovery. These targets are both ambitious from an operational perspective and will make Hollywood weaker, not stronger, Warner Bros. Board says. Netflix has identified $2 billion to $3 billion in expected cost synergies. Warner Bros. Discovery chief Samuel D. Piazza Jr. said in the statement, following a careful evaluation of Paramount's recently launched tender offer, the board concluded that the offer's value is inadequate with significant risks and costs imposed on our shareholders. This offer once again fails to address key concerns that we have consistently communicated to Paramount through our extensive agreement, engagement, and reviews of their 6 previous proposals. We are confident that the merger of Netflix, our merger with Netflix represents superior, more certain value for our shareholders, and we look forward to delivering on the compelling benefits of our combination. So, in other words, Warner Brothers saw through the bullshit that Paramount and David Ellison was trying to do here, and they're basically saying, we're not doing this unless you change this and actually do this the right way. And really, are you that surprised? Like, when that news came out that Warner Brothers and Netflix were merging, we knew that Paramount was going to try to do some shady shit to try to get this deal done to work in their favor. But Warner Brothers clearly saw through the BS, and I have to give David Zaslav a lot of credit because the fact that they were offering more money, and I've called this guy a slideball ever since he became the WB's head of the Warner Brothers company, and the fact that he's still saying no to this is just like, I mean, I don't want to say I'm starting to like this guy here, but let me quote Candy from Django Unchained. You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention. I mean, it's just something where, yeah, how did they think this was going to actually work out here? And look, I said this a couple weeks ago. The Netflix Warner Brothers merger deal still has a lot of question marks and still has a lot of concerns about whether or not this thing could actually help the industry out or actually can make it worse. But let's just be honest with ourselves. This is much better than Paramount taking over because you know Paramount is going to do everything in its power to basically ruin that company by appeasing to the real head of Paramount, which is Donald Trump. Because let's be honest, because I mean, do I even need to say why I think that? Look at what they've done to CBS News since then. Look at what they did to Stephen Colbert. Colbert himself literally came on the show last week and said, if Paramount has $108 billion to go and buy Warner Brothers, I'm sure they could find a way to keep its most popular show on the air, which basically is saying that, yeah, they canceled Colbert not because of the ratings, but to help appease the trust of the Trump administration. I mean, that's literally what it's come down to here. But So yeah, it looks like right now Warner Brothers is not budging on Paramount. They're going to stick with budging with Netflix. They're going to stick with their current plans, which means that this could still take a while for it to get done. But hey, I'm glad to see Warner Brothers isn't backing down on this for more money. So you got to give them credit where credit is due there. So that's the latest there, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time we'll be talking about this in the near future. So with that said, let's get to the real big shocker of the year, to end the year off in the news. The big story that broke this week: the Oscars have a new home, and it's not the place you think it is. So last week we talked about how there were other places considering picking up the Oscars. Netflix reportedly was considered a possibility, but they backed down. So did Amazon, and it looked like NBC was probably the next likely choice to possibly get them. That's kind of the direction we thought they were going to go with it. But then, coincidentally, the same day that the Warner Brothers Paramount news came out, the news came out that the Oscars are moving, but not to NBC. This is according to the Hollywood Reporter. In news that will send shockwaves across the entertainment industry, the Oscars ceremony, which has aired on ABC since 1976, will be moving to YouTube starting in 2029 and will be broadcasted by the streamer through at least 2033, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences announced on Wednesday. The Disney-owned Alphabet Network will continue to air the Oscars along the world's most watched awards telecast to its 100th edition of the award show in 2028. After that, the ceremony will be always live and free to over 2 billion people around the world on YouTube and to YouTube TV subscribers in the United States. As part of the newly inked deal, YouTube will broadcast not only the Oscar ceremony itself, which generated $150 million in revenue from the Academy during the fiscal year that ended on June 30th, the vast majority via the TV rights deal with Disney, but also a significant amount of related content. Also coming to YouTube, red carpet pre-shows and behind-the-scenes in-show content, the Oscar nominations announcements, the Governor's Awards, at which the Academy presents honorary Oscars and occasionally the Irving G. Thalberg Memorial Award and the G. Herschel Humanitarian Award, the Oscar nominees luncheon, the Student Academy Awards ceremony, the Scientific and Technical Awards ceremony, Academy members and filmmaker interviews, film education programs, podcasts, and more. The Academy Museum of Motion Pictures will also be supported by the Google Arts and Culture Initiative, which will help to provide digital access to select exhibitions and programs and help to digitize some of the more than 52 million items that are part of the Academy collection. Landing the world's most high-profile and most-watched award show is a big feather in the cap of deep-pocketed YouTube, which, as the Hollywood Reporter reported in a cover story earlier this year, is intent on becoming the most powerful platform in the world. Neil Mohan, the company's CEO, said in a statement Wednesday, "The Oscars are one of our essential cultural institutions, honoring excellence in storytelling and artistry. Partnering with the Academy to bring the celebration of art and entertainment to viewers all over the world will inspire a new generation of creativity and film lovers while staying true to the Oscars story legacy." And they got a chart here showing how the decline of the Academy Awards has definitely fallen in the 15 years since then. They got like I think it's 2009, 36 million viewers to more recently 19.69 million viewers in 2025, which is better than the last couple of years, but ratings have been in the decline for several years now on the show. So it's really not a surprise that the Oscars are moving to a place where it could do very well on YouTube in general here. But continuing on with the story here. The outgoing home of the Oscars issues a statement of its own. ABC has been the proud home to the Oscars for more than half a century. We look forward to the next 3 telecasts, including the show's centennial celebration in 2028, in which the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science continues success. So they're going to get it to the 100th Oscars, which I think is a perfect ending ground for the show in general, to end with the 100th ceremony on ABC and then start the next century of the Oscars on YouTube. For Disney, the Oscars have been a key part of a sizable portfolio of live events, but are also an expensive and depreciating asset. Ratings for the Oscars telecasts are a fraction of what they were even just a decade ago. Earlier this year, Disney's window to exclusively negotiate for the Oscars lapsed, in part, sources say, because the company was unwilling to overpay for a property that is not the moneymaker it once was. Plus, there has been long frustration on ABC about the Academy's reluctancy to meet it halfway on things like the number of categories presented during the telecast and the overall length of the telecast. It remains to be seen if YouTube will have more success than ABC did at convincing the Academy to modernize the show. Going into the rights deal that led to this deal, streaming wars was a top priority for the Academy, which was highly cognizant of the linear TV's decline. The Oscars only streamed online for the first time this year, with Disney putting the show on Hulu. Streaming platforms like YouTube and Netflix also have global reach and scale that traditional media companies can't match. Even Disney, which has global rights to the Oscars, sold them on a country-by-country basis to local TV partners. YouTube was sure to note in Wednesday's press release that the Oscars will be available to YouTube TV subscribers in addition to 2 billion plus global users. Analysts expect YouTube TV to pass Comcast and Charter to become the largest pay TV service in the United States at some point in the next year. By 2029, it will likely be one of the largest players in linear TV, in addition to its global scale as a creator-led platform. While the specifics remain unclear, the deal is still 4 years away from beginning after all. YouTube is expected to give many of its creators access to the awards, certainly on the red carpet and likely in the Dolby Theater as well. And they're talking about all the stuff that this benefits, but this is a pretty big deal overall, even though the Oscars are not the big ratings record holders that they used to be when they were on ABC anymore. And you could say that most of it was because of the pandemic, but it was already starting to go down since then. I mean, the ratings were starting to fall off a little bit here, and it's a very interesting scenario here, and I think this could actually work out in the favor of the Academy Awards to go down this path here. I'm really curious to see what they'll do with this. And as somebody here on YouTube, this is an opportunity to use this potentially to bolster a lot of people's channels in general, to get the hype build up here. And who knows, maybe YouTube actually sees some of these channels in particular. Not saying me personally, but hey, YouTube, let me know in the future if you need me to be down there at the first Oscars in 2029, because I think I can make some plans down there. Hey, make for a great 40th birthday present for me. But with all that said, though, this is a pretty big deal, and it's amazing that that the Oscars basically decided to stick with it, to go to YouTube on this whole thing, even though they probably won't get the same amount of viewers that the ABC show does. Even nowadays, it's gonna be very interesting to see how people take the show in general here, and how this will have an impact on YouTube's future in general here. So I'm definitely curious to see how this pans out overall. But it was not just the Academy Awards that was making the Oscars that were making big pushes with big mergers this week. Not just Warner Brothers and Paramount, but Sony is making some headway by picking up a big franchise. So yeah, here's the story that really came out of nowhere. Sony has acquired the rights to the Peanuts franchise, and this is a pretty massive deal here. It's actually a different number than what was initially reported. When I put this as a story for the later in the week, it was originally $465 million, but according to Variety, it's $457 million. So let me go ahead and take a look at the story itself and see if there's anything different here. This is, again, from Variety. Sony is paying for more than a few Peanuts to get majority ownership of Charles M. Schulz's beloved Peanuts franchise featuring Snoopy, Charlie Brown, and more. Sony Pictures Entertainment and Sony Music Entertainment Japan announced that they have entered into a definitive agreement with Canadian media company Wahlberg to indirectly acquire all of the 41% stake held by Wahlberg in Peanuts Holding LLC. Sony will pay Canada $630 million to Wahlberg for the... Maybe that's... I think I'm reading this. Canadian dollars. $630 million to Wahlberg for the 41% share, or roughly $457 million. The closing of the transaction is subject to certain closing conditions, including regulatory approvals. As a result of the transaction, SMEJ and Sony Pictures Entertainment, together with SMEJ's existing approximately 39% stake, will indirectly own 80% of Peanuts Holdings, LLC, which the members of the family of Charles M. Schulz will continue to own the remaining 20%. The ownership of the rights to Peanuts and the management of its business continue to be handled by Peanuts Worldwide, a wholly owned subsidiary of Peanuts Holding, LLC. With Sony taking an 80% stake, Peanuts Holding, LLC will become a consolidated subsidiary of the Sony Group. SMEJ will take the lead in managing Peanuts Holding Leaders LLC in partnership with SPE. Since 2018, SMEJ has been proud to be a part of the partnership between Peanuts, an iconic global entertainment brand with a 75-year legacy of delighting audiences worldwide. Shunsuke Muramatsu, President and Group CEO, Sony Music Entertainment Japan, said in a statement. With the additional ownership stake, we are thrilled to be able to further evaluate the value of the Peanuts brand by drawing one of the Sony Group's extensive global networks and collective expertise. I'm trying to see if there's anything of noteworthiness here. So, essentially, Sony has basically acquired the Peanuts library, but as it says right here, there's still the deal with Apple TV, so they're still going to have the Apple shows and specials on there. They're still working on the Peanuts movie for Apple there. But I think the biggest question I have to say is, can Sony find a way to put the Peanuts specials back on TV again? I mean, I mean, this is something that I've always talked about on this channel, and mostly on the review, and also on the Review Network too. But like, can please someone find a way to get the Peanuts specials back on TV again? Like, it's not fair that Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer can still be seen on television, and yet A Charlie Brown Christmas can't be played on TV during the holiday season. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Even it has to be on PBS of all places, which it was on there for a couple of years, and then they let that deal go. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know. That's just my personal thing behind this whole thing in general here. I have no real gain in this whole thing in general. As long as they keep up with the spirit of the Peanuts in general, as long as they don't destroy what makes the Peanuts so special, which I don't think they're going to do here. I think Sony is smart enough to know how to use these characters here in general. And as long as the family is still involved in this, I don't think anything really drastic is going to change from this whole thing. But it is very interesting to see a company like Sony bringing these characters in here in general, and hopefully giving them some new life to a lot of people here. And I'm really curious to see what happens with the Peanut specials too. If they ever get released on physical media again, does that mean Sony takes over the physical media rights to those from Warner Brothers, or what? Because we just had the Peanuts collection come out on Blu-ray and DVD this past year. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. So. But that's pretty interesting to see that Sony has gotten the rights to the Peanuts characters. That's very interesting overall. So, with that said, let's go ahead and get to some Disney news. You thought that the bombing of Snow White earlier in the year was going to end the live-action remakes from Disney? Lilo and Stitch basically said, no, you ain't getting away from that anytime soon, because we got two stories related to upcoming Disney live-action projects. Although this first one, though, technically isn't a live-action remake, but it is sort of a live-action version of something from an anime property, and that is the fact that Disney is developing a live-action movie based off the Beauty and the Beast villain Gaston. This is from Deadline Hollywood, and it says Disney looks to be taking another one of its iconic villains and giving it the live-action spin. As sources tell Deadline, the studio is in early development on a pick centering around the Beauty and the Beast character Gaston. Dave Callum is writing the script, and Michelle Rejwan is producing. No directors attached to the time. Kate Herron and Brianna Redmond previously penned a previous draft. Gaston first appeared in Disney's original, it says 92, but that's incorrect, 1991 animated classic Beauty and the Beast as an arrogant and ruthless hunter who has unrequited feelings for the main protagonist, the Beauty Belle, and ultimately becomes the main adversary of the Beast. Disney went on to produce a live-action version of the film in 2017 with Luke Evans playing Gaston, and following its billion-dollar box office success, there was discussion of a TV series centering around the character, with Evans reprising the role, but that project was scrapped. While plot details are vague for this version, sources say it will be a new and original version with a new actor, and that the film will have swashbuckling tones to it. Insiders say the studio is high on the idea. So, I mean, yeah, like I said, this isn't technically a live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast. I mean, they've already done that, and at least in my personal opinion, it didn't work out so well. But there's an interesting idea here that could be done here. It'd be cool to see the adventures that Gaston went on before the events of Beauty and the Beast. You know, if they go with this idea of kind of like a Pirates of the Caribbean meets Beauty and the Beast type of story here, I think there could be something done here that could make this work overall. And more importantly, one of the producers on this, Michelle Rejwan, has worked on the Star Wars franchise. So, you know, she's worked on a number of different Star Wars films, Star Wars projects, Force Awakens, Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And not to mention, you've got a good writer in David Callum, who does make a lot of good stuff. Very rarely makes a bad thing, like Godzilla x Kong, The Expendables, Shang-Chi, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So he has a good repertoire overall. So this has potential overall. So there is definitely a lot of possibility with this. The question is Disney going to actually try with this? Are they going to do something new and unique with it, like they did with Maleficent, which started out promisingly with the first film with Angelina Jolie in it, and then they kind of ruined it with Mistress of Evil with the sequel. But if they can do something like that with Gaston, I think this could actually turn out to be pretty good. The other Disney live-action story of the week, on the other hand, so not only does it sound like they are moving forward with this live-action version of Tangled, but that story about Scarlett Johansson joining, apparently not happening anymore, with her now joining the Batman Part 2. And not to mention she's got The Exorcist coming up. But we do have an update on Tangled with the news of some casting news that is happening right now. And this is from The Hollywood Reporter, as it says here. Walt Disney Pictures is weaving a tangled web as it searches for the actors to inhabit the live-action adaptation of its 2010 animated movie. The studio quietly conducted screen test and chemistry readings in London last week for the parts of Rapunzel, the curious and plucky would-be princess with magical hair, and Flynn Rider, the cocky outlaw thief who helps her escape her tower prison. The list, which may not be a complete accounting of those who tested, offers a glimpse of potential future Hollywood stars, or at least a look at whom the industry sees as having a chance to go into thriving leads. Multiple sources say that those who tested for Rapunzel include Freya Sky, who made her feature debut with Disney's Zombies 4 Dawn of the Vampires earlier this year, Sarah Catherine Hook, who appeared in the recent season of White Lotus, Australian Tegan Kropp, perhaps best known as playing Raven in the DC series Titans, and Olivia Mae Barrett, who appears on Apple Plus series Invasion. Sources also say the Summer I Turned Pretty headliner Lola Tung was on the mix, but did not test as she may have a scheduling conflict. Summer may have exercised its option on her for the film continuation of the series. For Ryder, Milo Manheim, the male leader of the Disney Zombies franchise, as well as Charlie Gillespie, whose credits range from this year's comedy Splitsville to Netflix series Julie and the Phantoms, are known to have tested. Both have shown musical chops in their respective overs, also testing with Scottish thespian Gilly Jones. A decision could be made sooner than later, according to sources. The other big role in the feature is that of Mother Gossel, the witch mother who kept Rapunzel locked up in the tower in order to use her magical hair to stay young. Scarlett Johansson was attached to bring the role to life, but that is no longer the case. The actress will now be shooting a reboot of The Exorcist as well as the Batman Plus 2 next year. Michael Gracie, who counts the music biopics Better Man and The Greatest Showman among credits, is directing the feature, which will have like the original, big musical elements. Disney is eyeing to shoot Tangled in the UK beginning in June, although scheduling could change depending on the casting. Now, I do like what this director did recently with Better Man. The Greatest Showman, great soundtrack, but the movie's crap, to quote most Sislak. But, so I'm cautiously optimistic about this, even though I want them to stop making these live-action remakes just like everybody else does. Even though I've been more supportive of them in the last couple of years than most people have. But, yeah, I'm starting to even get tired of them, too. I didn't hate Snow White, either. I just didn't think it was as bad as people made it out to be. But I can see why everybody was so peeved about that movie, because there were a lot of things about that movie that don't work, and that Moana remake looks terrible too. I mean, I saw the trailer for that again this week with Avatar, and yeah, I just don't want to see it, man, but I know I'm going to. I mean, that's pretty much everybody's same thing with Avengers, you know, everyone was pissed off about the Doomsday teaser being just nothing but, hey, Chris Evans is back as as Steve Rogers. It's just like, well, I'm not going to go see this movie. Shut up, you're going to go see this movie. So, I mean, it could be good, but I'm not getting all my hopes up on this one here. I'm hoping for the best, but yeah, it's not looking too good. At least in my opinion. I'll give it a shot. But with that said, we have one more Hollywood story to cover here. And speaking of movies that I know I was never going to go see, Sony said, oh yes, you are going to go see this movie, because look at who we just got to direct this movie. So yeah, remember that Labubu movie they were talking about last month? Yeah, and I said that I was not going to see it. Someone at Sony looked at that and said, oh yeah, motherfucker, just take a look at who we got to direct it. Paul King is going to be directing the Labubu movie. Fuck! That means I got to see it. God damn it. Anyway, this is from The Hollywood Reporter. Paul King is going from cuddly jam-eating bears to cute, ugly monsters. A month after nabbing the film rights to Labubu, Sony has tapped Paddington and Wonka filmmaker King to bring to life a big-screen take on one of the world's biggest collectible sensations. King is set to direct the feature project, which he will produce with Department M, who gave us the recent Hand That Rocks the Cradle remake, and Wenix Shi of Wish Dragon and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. The project is in early development and is still in need of a writer. Sony is working with Chinese retailer and brand owner Pop Mart on the adaptation. Sony has no comment. Well, you did it. You made me want to go see this movie now, because Paul King is a great director. A phenomenal director. With what he did with the Paddington movies, and even though he wasn't the director of this last one that came out, Paddington in Peru, that still was a great movie overall. He has made one movie, though, that I really do not like, and that is the Wonka movie that came out a couple years ago with Timothée Chalamet. I'm sorry, I just never got into it. I couldn't handle it. It felt like a studio manipulative movie, and didn't feel like a movie that was made by somebody who wanted to make a really good Willy Wonka movie. This is the guy that loves the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and when I think of that movie in particular, I just feel a lot of like a manipulation from the studio and all that. They brought in Paul King because he's a reliable director. Who could sucker people in, and it didn't feel like his movie in general. That movie just didn't work for me. But that's just one movie a bad film from a really solid director. So I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. If he's working on the script for this, just like he did with the Paddington movies, I think this could work out pretty well. But we'll see what happens as we go along here. So those are the big entertainment stories from this past week. But there's a couple things that I want to touch on here before we get on out of here. So this week begins the college football playoff, the new college football playoff that started last year. A lot of question marks, of course, of how this new year was, the second year was going to be from the first year, considering how the first year was kind of rough. A lot of blowouts. Nobody was really doing a whole lot to really like make these games competitive. Even in the national championship game, when it matters the most, nobody was really doing a whole lot in general, and that really kind of bugged me a whole lot. But this year, there's a lot of questions as well, not just because of the way these games are going to be played, but the teams they selected to be in there. Of course, the big thing was that Notre Dame didn't make it in there because they lost to Miami. And then you got the Big 12 Conference and you got the not the Big 12 Conference, the Sun Belt Conference, James Madison's champions, and the American Conference, Tulane coming in here, and a lot of people were wondering why the fuck are they in there? Like, you really expect them to play against teams like Ole Miss and Oregon and try to make it a game? And sure enough, not so much. As we found out. But here's the thing. It did start off promisingly with the first two games of the playoff, because the first game, Alabama and Oklahoma, was actually pretty competitive. Oklahoma had a 17-0 lead, and then Alabama, out of the blue, came back and tied it up at the half, and then they just took over from that point forward. And then Miami and Texas A&M was a close game overall. It came down to the final quarter. Actually came down to the last 2 minutes of the game where Miami scores the touchdown to win it. And then Tulane and Ole Miss. And then sure enough, everyone's big worries about what those two teams were going to do. Both Tulane and Ole Miss started to show both Tulane and James Madison started to rear their ugly heads, because Ole Miss got out to a quick 27-3 start before the fourth quarter happened. And the final score was 41-10. And then James Madison happened, and that was even worse. I mean, at the end of the first half, James Madison was already up 34-6. 34-6 before the half was over. Like, we have a problem with the college football playoff thing. And the biggest problem is, we really don't have an idea of how to fix this. Like, I mean, nobody really has an idea to fix this. I mean, would it make sense if we put into... It's like the whole purpose of this was to get more teams in there, because they want to have a repeat of what happened a couple of years ago when teams like TCU and Washington and Cincinnati made the playoffs. Everyone was just like, well, why can't it be us? Why can't it be us? Yeah, you're going up against teams like Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, pretty much all the SEC, who have dominated in every single game they've been involved in. Georgia, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious why this was a bad idea from the get-go, and yeah, not surprisingly, so far it is not looking too promising for this whole thing. And of course, there's going to be a lot of question marks about the college football playoff rules and all that. And there's even talks about adding more teams in there. Yeah, let's make it even more complicated. Here's how I think we can fix the problem here. Remember a game show back in the day called Russian Roulette? No, I'm not talking about the game where you take a gun and you pull the trigger and hope you don't get a bullet in you. No, I'm talking about the 2002 game show, which was hosted by Mark Wahlberg, not the Mark Wahlberg, the Shop Till You Drop Mark Wahlberg, where we have six contestants, and these trap doors where you answer questions, and they add a drop zone every single time, and you pull a lever and make sure you don't hit the drop zone, because if you do, there's a hole underneath you, and if the drop zone hits you, you're going and opens up, you're going under. So my thinking behind this is that we do the exact same thing, and we do my thinking is we do something like that. We get all the 12 teams the top 12 teams in the country before the playoffs come into play. We put them in a room, do a Russian roulette style thing, have them pull the lever, and have one drop zone for everyone that drops to the floor. Then we put them in rankings. Like let's just say it's Notre Dame. If Notre Dame falls, that'll be the 12th seed. If Ohio State falls next, it'll be the 11th seed, and so on and so forth. I mean, Granted, yes, this could be really, really complicated, but someone on Twitter actually made another idea behind this, which I actually kind of agree with this. We could explore the other way. Take the coaches of the 72 best teams and divide them into 12 Russian roulette pods. There's plenty of ways to do it non-lethally now, i.e. roll with a d6 with a designated safe number. The survivor of each pod is seeded into the playoffs. This is actually a pretty good point, and more what I was talking about beforehand, because when I first put that idea out there, it was just kind of like, I didn't really think about exactly what I was saying overall, but yeah, the guy put it into good perspective here. I don't know if I want to say his name or not. Xandrox is what his name is. Xandrox. That's his name. Good. So yeah, I completely agree with you on that. But yeah, that's just how I would say we fix the problem here. But it's not going to be that way, sadly. But hopefully there will be some changes down the road here, because this is getting ridiculous on how they're handling this whole thing. So. But anyway, that's that, and there's one last thing I want to talk about before we get on out of here. Okay, so you may not notice this because you're listening to this literally after the next segment, but this is taking place right after the Steelers pull off the biggest what the hell was that win I have ever seen in my life, because I'll just say this. Detroit Lions fans, welcome back to the pre-Dan Campbell era where the refs are going to screw you in the most gut-wrenching way possible, because my God, that took me back to the days when the Lions got screwed over by plays in the last few minutes a lot back in the day. But Steelers won. Steelers won, and hey, congratulations, Chicago and San Francisco. You're now in the playoffs. Yeah. Okay, so that happened before. That happened a while. That happened in between the takes of this next segment here, but. This last one here, this isn't anything news related. It's just something I heard last night while watching the show in the background. As I said last week, I got MeTV Tunes for the first time this past week, and I was watching what was on TV, and it was the Police Academy animated series, which I've touched on the website, and it's not that great. But then again, nothing from the Police Academy series really is that amazing overall, in my opinion. But the point I'm trying to get across here is that I was watching an episode last night, and it was an episode where it was this woman who had like a lackey, and she had like these magical hand powers that can make things come to life or something like that. It was really stupid overall, but I mean, it's about what you expect for a Police Academy show, and yeah, it's just something where it's just kind of like, it's nothing too amazing. But in the episode in particular, there's a segment towards the very end of the episode. And let me see if I can get the name of the episode here, because I recorded it here, and I want you to listen. I just want you to listen to something from it. But so the episode is called Suitable for Framing. It's the 11th episode of the second season, which technically was basically one season. But there were two seasons within 1 year. For some reason, they split up into two. I don't know why. But the point I'm trying to get across is, there's a scene towards the end of the episode where the police academy gets up to the bad guys, and they're using their machines to make everything come to life in the machine in there. And the woman's lackey, the villain's lackey, says it's supposed to say the line, "Try my sock bomb by size." That's what it's supposed to sound like, but I want you to listen to this and tell me if it sounds like something completely different, because I heard this and I'm just like, try my what?
Alright, slime ball, your number's up. Prepare to fire bazooka. Try my fuck bomb on for size.
Yeah, it sounds like he says, try my fuck bomb on for size. Listen. I know he's supposed to say, try my sock bomb on for size, but it literally sounds like he's saying, try my fuck bomb on for size. Like, I listened to that, 10 times last night. I'm thinking, did he just say what I think he just said? Because there's no way they would have put this in a kid's cartoon, an 80s cartoon for kids back in the 1980s. Not in a million years, but, I don't know. Let me see if I can find something here. I thought maybe I could find a more cleaner version, because I literally recorded this off of TV last night. But again, it literally sounds like he's saying, try my fuck bomb.
Alright, slime ball, your number's up. Prepare to fire bazooka. Try my fuck bomb on for size.
Yeah, you hear it, right? I'm not being crazy on this, because this is not the first time I've misheard something and I took it for something else, and people tell me I'm crazy. Because last week in the Colts Seahawks game, Philip Rivers was playing in that game, and Scott Hansen on NFL Red Zone was talking about how, well, Philip Rivers has played in over 1,600 different NFL games in his professional NFL career.
How about more than 500 yards of total offense between the Lions and the Rams in that game in Inglewood? Here's the Philip Rivers touchdown, his first touchdown pass in more than 1,800 days. Coming to the sideline there, that's some extra juice on that one. I mean, this would be a massive road win just in their season, but when you factor that this man has played more than 1,600 games in his NFL career.
You heard that right. He said 1,600 games in his NFL career. And for anyone out there that doesn't know the real numbers, it's basically, it would be 265 games for Philip Rivers since he started playing in 2004. But yeah, this is I mean, it's essentially something where it's not really much of a big deal overall. Just something that I saw that was just kind of like, eh. I mean, that sounded really, really odd to me. Like, I literally heard him say, "Try my fuck bomb on for size." Again, I'll play it one more time so you can hear it.
Alright, slime ball, your number's up.
Prepare to fire bazooka.
Try my fuck bombs on for size.
Am I hearing something completely different, or are you hearing the same thing? I'm literally hearing him say, "Try my fuck bomb on for size." I don't know. What do you guys think out there? But let me know down below. But anyway, let's go ahead and wrap this up here, because we are now going to head into the... it's getting close to 8 o'clock here, and I want to watch the Sunday Night Football game. So let's go ahead and get to the recommendations for this week. And in terms of recommendations this week, there's only one big new release on this couple days before Christmas, and it's one of my favorite movies of the year, and one of the best horror sequels I've seen in a long time, and that's The Black Phone 2, which comes out on Blu-ray just before the holiday season. And again, perfect timing, too. A movie set in the snow. Who wouldn't want to watch a movie about a guy called the Grabber who kills kids in the middle of a snowy background? I mean, who doesn't want that for the holiday season? But I really enjoyed the hell out of this movie. It was a really fun movie. Ethan Hawke is having a good time with this. And again, I just love the idea. I just love the snowy aspect of this whole movie. I love the snow. I've talked about how much I love winter in movies in general, and this thing did a very good job of... Excuse me. It did a good job of making you feel like it was brutally cold outside. It was winter. It reminded me so much of this criminally underrated Universal movie from the 80s, Ghost Story. And and watching this, I couldn't help but not think about that when I'm watching this movie again. So I'm really looking forward to getting that in my collection soon. Hopefully before Christmas. But I'm trying to see if there's anything else here. I don't see anything. There is the new Yorgos Lanthimos movie, Bogania, with Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons in it. I haven't seen it, so I can't really say if it's any good or not. For some reason, it's saying The Long Walk is coming out on 4K this week. I don't know exactly what this is, because The Long Walk came out a couple months ago, actually. I don't know, it's listed here on Amazon, but the big new release before the holiday is, of course, Black Phone 2 for me. That's the one I'm definitely getting my hands on this week, so... with all of that said, we're going to wrap this episode of the Reviewing Network Live up this week, and thank you guys so much for watching and listening to this. This has been a really good episode overall, ending on a much better note than last week's did, with the whole thing about Rob Reiner happening while the show was going on. I'd never had that happen before, a breaking news story like that happening as we were recording that, But yeah, with all that said, thank you so much for watching this, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button. And also, don't forget to check out the previous episode we did, as well as our playlist. And from all of us to all of you, have yourself a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. Whatever you celebrate, have a happy one of it, because it's been... we definitely need a lot of happiness right now in the world. It's just not been a good year. Let's hope for some good stuff in the new year, but we always say that every year, and it always gets worse, but let's try to be positive this year. So with all that said, have a Merry Christmas, have a happy holiday, and I will see you guys next week for another episode. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Till then, we are out.